The distance from the kitchen to the parlor wasn't that great, so Genji had gone and come back by himself, but the guest room was a little farther away. Natsu had warned him to avoid being alone whenever possible. And, just now, Nanjo had also admonished him, saying it would be better if he held a little more concern for his safety. Kanon accompanied Genji, and the two of them went to visit Iwa and Hideyoshi in their guest room. Genji knocked on the door.
Eva-sama, Hideyoshi-sama, お夕食の準備が整いました。
He waited a short while for them to come out, but there was no response.
Genji-sama, これは
Kanon pointed under the door. A western envelope had been inserted under it. Normally, when something was inserted this way, it would be interpreted as a message from someone outside to someone in the room. So, since this might be a private note meant for Iwa and Hideyoshi, it was not something that Kanon and Genji were supposed to take interest in. But this western envelope was one of Kinzo's, the same kind as the one Maria had taken out last night and surprised everyone with.
間違いない。親方様の封筒。
あるいは
Even though this was one of Kinzo's envelopes, the letter Maria read aloud in the previous night hadn't come from Kinzo. Genji continued knocking a little harder and called out in a loud voice.
Eva-sama, Eva-sama, Genji でございます。いらっしゃいますか。お返事をお願いいたします。Eva-sama.
But there was no response from inside. Sometimes, when the servants went to call some guests for a meal, the guests would be sleeping so deeply that they wouldn't wake up. In times like that, the servants would stick a letter in the door to show that it was time to come out and leave the guest be. But despite that, Genji beat even harder on the door and called out Iwa's name. However, there was no answer. Kanon stuck his ear up to the door, held his breath, and listened for any sounds coming from inside.
テレビの音らしきものが。でも気配が感じられません。お部屋は空っぽかも。
Genji took out a handkerchief and, careful not to touch it with his bare hands, gently pulled out the envelope that had been stuck under the door. It was sealed with deep red sealing wax. Without a doubt, the mark on that sealing wax had come from the Ushiromiya family head's ring.
Eva-sama, Eva-sama, どうかお返事を。もうお部屋にはいらっしゃいませんか。
But there was still no answer. There was a chance that those two were aimlessly walking around the mansion. This was the home Iwa had grown up in. There was plenty of reason to think that she had gone out on a casual stroll. Genji groped around in his pocket and pulled out the bundle of keys which contained the key that would open the guest room.
Genji-sama!
Kanon also understood what this meant. They would sometimes unlock the door so they could go in and do things like make the beds, but only after they made sure the guests were out. To unlock the door for any other reason, and especially to do so when there was a chance the guests hadn't given permission and might still be in there, was an action unbecoming of a servant. But Genji had decided. If the only problem had been that his knock hadn't received a reply, he wouldn't have gone this far. But the envelope under the door was doubtlessly one of Kinzo's. Or rather, one of the western envelopes of the Ushiromiya family had. After last night, the sender of this envelope could be someone other than Kinzo. If this letter had been sent by someone else,
申し訳ございません。お部屋を失礼させていただきます。
After giving that final notice, Genji stuck one of the keys from the bundle into the keyhole. There was the sound of the door unlocking. And, after slowly turning the knob, he slowly started opening the door. Light seeped through the crack of the door. Were they in the room? Or had they forgotten to turn out the lights? It was the sound of the door chain being pulled tight. The chain had been secured. The chain couldn't be secured from the outside. So it also proved that they were in the room. The sound of voices on the TV seeped out of the room. The lights, the chain, and the TV. All of these things made it clear they were in the room. But there was no sign of them. Genji called to Eva once again through the crack of the door. But there was no answer.
Genji-sama, いかがしますか?
As part of their job, the servants were able to unlock almost any lock in the mansion. But they had no way to open a door with a chain. The only way to get by the chain was to cut it. That was certainly not permitted as part of a servant's usual work. A creepy chill had already rushed up their backs. Kanon held his breath again and tried to sense someone through the door, but even so, he was not able to sense anyone.
私は奥様をお呼びしてくる。カノンのチェーンの切断。
はい。
As Kanon hurried away to get a cutting tool, Genji called him to a stop.
待てカノン。厨房に戻り、熊沢と行動するように。断じて一人で行動してはならんぞ。
はい。かしこまりました。
It looked like Kanon was wondering why he had to do something so troublesome in the middle of this urgent situation. But Genji had said it out of wariness. He didn't care what happened to himself. But in the worst case scenario, he didn't want anything to happen to Kanon. In the kitchen, Kumasawa was piling food on the serving cart. And Nanjo was waiting for Genji, apparently wanting to show him a move he'd finally thought up that might turn the tables on him. But Genji's appearance immediately told him that something was wrong.
おや、どうしましたか、源氏さん。南條先生、申し訳ありませんが、この勝負は一度中断させてください。カノンはチェーンを頼む。熊沢、食事の配膳は一時中断し、カノンと同行する。私は奥様のところへ行く。南條先生、ご一緒に。何かあったんですか？
Genji took Nanjo, who still didn't know what was going on, and quickly left the kitchen.
熊沢さん、申し訳ありませんが、僕と一緒に来てください。
何があったんですか、カノンさん。
Kumasawa said almost exactly the same thing as Nanjo, unable to take in the situation, and chased after Kanon, who had flown out into the hallway. Taking Kumasawa with him, Kanon went to a storage room and looked through the tools packed in toolboxes and hanging all over the walls, trying to find something that could be used to cut the chain.
何を探してるんですか？私も手伝いますよ。
ドアチェーンを切断するんです。大きめの番線カッターはどこだっけ？
ドアチェーンを？どうしてそんなことをするんですか？
エヴァ様たちの部屋にチェーンが。中にいらっしゃるはずなのに、お声をかけても返事がないんです。
It took Kumasawa some time to figure out how cutting the chain and Eva and Hideyoshi not answering were connected, but she did realize that this was an urgent situation.
これ れなら多分。
Kanon took down a very large wire cutter that had been hanging on a wall. It was called a cutter, but maybe it would be easier to understand if we said it was shaped like a large pair of pliers. Kanon remembered once being warned that this dangerous tool could easily cut through one of your fingers. Kanon took that and rushed up the stairs. He already knew instinctively. He should fight for every minute, every second to open it quickly. Or perhaps it was already...
待ってください、カノンさん。
早く。
Kumasawa eventually caught up with him, gasping for breath, with both hands on her knees. When Kanon changed his grip on the wire cutters and looked up at the door, he let out an "ah," struck speechless.
なんですかこれは。
Kumasawa screamed weakly, her face pallid. That was no surprise. Because right there, on the door, just like the magic circle that had been drawn on the shutter of the Rose Garden storehouse, there was another eerie shape drawn with a blood-like paint. However, it would be odd to call this one a magic circle. Because, unlike what most people would expect, it wasn't a circle with shapes drawn inside it, but a slightly more complicated geometrical shape. However, those strange characters filling in the gaps, which weren't from the alphabet, were the same kind as the ones on that magic circle on that shutter. But the thing that had Kanon struck speechless wasn't how eerie the magic circle was. It was that something like this hadn't been here a short while ago. First, he had taken a trip back to the kitchen. After that, he'd gone to the storage room to grab a tool and headed right back. Put those together and it couldn't have been more than 5 minutes. How could someone add something this creepy during that period of time? And as though it had just been drawn. Almost like the door itself was bleeding. Several unsettling vertical red lines slowly dripped down, getting longer and longer. Kumasawa's knees gave way and she sank down on the spot. If Kumasawa hadn't done this first, then Kanon surely would have wanted to.
ベアトリーチェ様。
ベアトリーチェ様の仕業ですよ。恐ろしや恐ろしや。
Kanon gulped, then readied the wire cutter and approached the door. He didn't want to get close to this disturbing magic circle, and he really didn't want to touch the steadily dripping substance that looked like blood. But if he didn't get close, he wouldn't be able to cut the chain. Fighting this cold feeling, he gulped again, and after gathering his courage, he went even closer, putting the wire cutter up against the chain. He then pressed with all of his strength, managing to cut through the chain far more easily than he'd anticipated. The cut chain fell into 2 separate parts, which continued to clang as they swayed back and forth.
カノンさん、足元に封筒が。しかもこれは親方様のもの。
It looked like Kumasawa had also noticed the western envelope at the bottom of the door. And that the sealing wax had been sealed with the head's ring. Kanon hesitated for just a second over whether he should open the door first or check inside the room. but he eventually decided on fulfilling his original purpose. Kanon pulled a handkerchief out of his pocket. This was so he wouldn't leave fingerprints on the door. If his worst fears were realized, the police would want to investigate this room too. He slowly pushed the door open. He was able to more clearly hear the sound of the television, which had been seeping out faintly this whole time.
Eva-sama.
Eva was lying face up on the bed. On the bed with her shoes still on? Kumasawa, who had fearfully entered after Kanon and who was hiding behind his back, screamed a short "Eek!" again when she saw Eva like that. Eva's shoes had been the first part of her that Kanon had seen, so the oddness of wearing shoes in bed was the first thing to strike him. But when Eva's head shifted into his line of sight, Kanon couldn't help but let out a short scream like Kumasawa. Right in the middle of Eva's forehead, something had been placed? Something was growing there? No. Right in the center of her forehead. Was it an old-fashioned knife? That or some weapon like it was sticking out. At the base of where it was stuck in, blood dripped down, staining the sheets on the other side bright red. Kumasawa's knees gave way once more, and she sank down on the floor. Her mouth kept flapping open and closed, but she couldn't even scream. Eva was dead, with some kind of weapon sticking out of her forehead. Both eyes were open wide, and the image of the person who killed her must have been burned into them. But the only mouth capable of naming that person had been shut for all eternity. Even though her forehead was the last place they wanted to look, they couldn't tear their eyes from it. Right there, the weapon was stuck into Eva's forehead, standing almost perfectly upright. And on the handle was a complicated design that you wouldn't expect to see on an ordinary weapon. That thing could be summed up with the word occult. It was a vulgar object, with a design that might have been some demon. Eva was on top of her bed, but the other bed was empty. Where was Hideyoshi? After taking a backwards glance at Kumasawa, still on her knees and stupefied, he checked the bathroom just in case. At the moment he opened the door, he was greeted by steam and the sound of the shower. The bathroom was of the same familiar style as most hotel bathrooms. When taking a shower, a waterproof curtain was used to keep water from flying out. That waterproof curtain was half open. And lying tumble down in the bathtub was Hideyoshi, completely naked with both eyes open, and pointing right at Kanon. Just like Eva, a weapon with a demon-like design was stuck into his forehead. Since his head had been under the shower's hot water this whole time, his face wasn't half covered and filthy with blood like Eva's had been. But the sight of him, dead, while still taking a shower, was tragic enough. Just then, they heard Natsui's voice coming from the hall. She was probably coming with Genji.
私でもこのような落書きが。この手紙は中には何と。
いえ。まだ読んでおりません。うかつに触らん方がいいですね。犯人の指紋が残っているかもしれん。警察に渡した方がいい。
わざわざ手紙を残すくらいです。どうせ指紋など残っています。
As Natsui said that, she picked up the envelope, and before checking its contents, she entered the room herself, where she found Eva dead.
エヴァさん、奥様、こちらには秀吉様も。
これは
カナ、シャワーを止めてあげなさい。気の毒にも程があります。
はい。
Kano gripped his handkerchief and twisted the valve, turning off the shower. In the bathtub, a small jar of body soap had fallen with its cap off. It really looked like he'd been attacked while taking a shower. There was still a small splash of blood clinging to the white bathtub, and the combination of red and white made a horrible contrast.
わかった。市販は出た。守護工場も始まった。おそらく殺されてから1時間経ったかどうかというところだろう。しかしこのような柄の短い凶器で頭蓋骨を考えられん。
Nanja checked the pulse and the pupils, making certain of the deaths once more. As Kanan watched this businesslike treatment, he thought, couldn't you tell at a glance that they're dead without doing all that? Nanja thought about removing the weapon, but then decided it would be better to preserve the scene and hand it over to the police, so he left it alone. But a close inspection of the base showed that it didn't have a blade. In fact, it was more conical than blade-shaped. He noticed that, rather than a knife, it was more like a short-handled spear, something with a shape better suited for thrusting than slicing. Rather than a short spear, you might call it a thick ice pick. At any rate, after looking at this scene, no further words were needed to describe what sort of terrible purpose such eerily designed weapons were originally made for. Nor was it necessary to explain how they carried out their function. Natsui, hoping to escape the repulsive steam filling the bathroom as soon as she could, covered her mouth with a handkerchief and dashed from the room. Just viewing their gruesome bodies for an instant had been enough to burn the image into her eyes. If she looked any longer, that image would surely remain in her vision for all eternity. The rising urge to vomit was exactly the same feeling she'd had that morning at the gardening storehouse. For a while, Natsui couldn't help but stand with her back facing the gas room, fighting that sickness in her stomach.
この部屋を子供たちにジョージ君に見せるわけにはいきません。至急この部屋を閉じなさい。見せられませんとも。両親のこんなむごい姿をとてもジョージさんには。
But they could tell that those fiercely racing footsteps in the hallway belonged to George, even before he came dashing into the room. George and the other children had been waiting in the parlor. However, when they saw Genji speak to Natsui, when they saw her turn pale and fly out of the parlor, they'd felt a sense of foreboding. And when they saw a large group of people gathered around the gas room, they were sure of it.
父さん、母さん。
なんだまた魔法陣かよ。
エヴァおばさんたちは無事なんだよな。おい、カノン君、これは何の騒ぎなんだ。
アトラ様。
Kanan didn't have to say anything. George's scream after he ran into the room told them everything they needed to know.
誰 誰がこんなことを。殺してやる、殺してやる。
ジョージ君、しっかり。
Natsu touched George's shoulder with her hand, but he violently shook her off. George fell over beside Eva and buried his face in the bed in front of his mother's face, wailing. Then he pounded on the bed with his fist, over and over again.
ジョージ兄さん、しっかり。バトラ様。
Battler had his back against the wall of the hallway and was covering his eyes with his right hand and weeping without restraint.
いてえぜ。心に決めた女を婚約した次の日に失った。同じ日に親父とおふくろまで殺されるなんてよ。そんなのあんまりにも無謀じゃねえか。
Of course, it's sad whenever anyone dies, no matter who it is. But the battler, those left alone by the deaths of others, were far more worthy of pity. Everyone here now had lost someone close to them. George wasn't the only one to be pitied. However, George's pain was far greater than everyone else's.
そりゃよ、人はいつか死ぬぞ。誰だっていつか死滅の悲しみと戦わなきゃならない日が来るだろうよ。でもよ、さあ、兄貴にとってはずっと未来の話で、しかもそいつが一つずつ順番に訪れるべきもんじゃねえかよ。濃すぎるぜ。野郎、少しは人の情けってもんがねえのかよ。
Maria tried to comfort Battler in a mechanical sounding voice. Battler violently wiped his tears.
クソだ。もう流さないぜ。悔し涙も悲しみの涙ももう二度と流さないぜ。ああ、全然ダメだ。俺たちは魔女様に爪を食らってるわけだ。主勢一方ってわけだ。そりゃダメだぜ。全然ダメだ。チェス盤がひっくり返っちまうぜ。野郎は俺たち羊が明日まで逃げる手段もなく怯えてるだけだろうと思ってるだろうよ。だからひっくり返すぜ。明日までこの島から逃げられねえのは野郎も同じだ。しょんべんちびりそうになりながら逃げ隠れするのは俺たちじゃねえ。いや、暴いてやるぜ。必ずな。明日までに。いや、明日なんか待たねえ。今夜だ。